Last year, I went camping with my wife in an RV we borrowed from her parents. They used it occasionally and would always talk about how fun it was. My wife had gone with them several times in the past, but I never had before. I've really never been much into camping, but I decided why not give it a go? It was, after all, in a camper and we wouldn't be pitching tents or sleeping in the rain. The RV was one of those that you drive, and it's rather large. It had a bed area above the driver's seats and a big TV in the living room, as well as an actual small bedroom in the back. We drove it up north a few hours to a campsite and we parked it. When we got there, we went outside and cooked some food just outside the RV in the park nearby. We explored the park a little bit after that until it got dark, and the bugs started to get bad. At that point, I was happy we had an RV, and we went back inside. As it got late, we started watching a movie on the TV inside of our RV. It was a relaxing and calm night. Afterwards, we retired and got ready for bed. As I was walking to the front of the RV to get something, I barely saw the top of a guy's head just outside the window. I was in the main living room part of the RV, and all of our lights were out. Because of this, I had a better view outside. I didn't think the guy had seen me, but I wasn't quite sure who he was or what he was doing outside. There hadn't really been any people directly next to us. Plus, we weren't like right by a sidewalk or a road. We had purposely got a spot a little ways out. I walked over to the front of the RV. We had a window cover on the windshield, so I went up to the little bunk area and looked out the small window on the side of it. I could barely see that there was a guy standing right in front of our RV and looking at it. He seemed to examine it for about 10 seconds or so and then walk off. I kept a watch for a few more minutes, and after not seeing him, I decided to go to bed. I was pretty sleepy and lay right down and closed my eyes. I was just starting to drift off when I heard my wife sit up very suddenly next to me. I opened my eyes and looked at her. She was staring out the window, and when she saw I was now sitting up as well, she whispered to me that she thought she saw a man's head looking inside the window. I looked to the window and nobody was there now, but I then told my wife of how I had seen a man looking around near our RV not much earlier. We thought how to handle this situation, and I decided it would be best to go outside and take a look. To be honest with you, I was sort of scared too, but I did want to know who this guy was and what he was doing. I walked forward to the front and was going to the main side door, but before I could even make it within 5 feet of the door, I heard on the other side of it some movement and then heard somebody try to open the door. I stopped right where I was and froze. Of course, the door was locked thankfully, so the guy couldn't get in, but I knew he was right outside. I thought on my feet, literally, and blurted out as loud as I could. I already called the policeman. I really don't know what made me say that. I hadn't thought about it, I really just said it. I heard the man start to walk away after that. I went over to the window and looked outside, just barely to see him disappearing into the woods. As I watched, my wife came over and looked out the window as well. After that, we decided we didn't want to spend the night there anymore. I knew we wouldn't be able to get much sleep, so we ended up driving the RV down the road and actually parked it in the back of a Walmart parking lot for the night. I'm still not sure what that guy wanted or who he was, but I don't care to find out. This story takes place about 5 years ago. I was in college at the time, and during summers when I was back home, I had a group of high school friends that I would hang out with. There were about 8 of us in the friend group, and we did all sorts of things together. In fact, we still hang out to this day. Anyways, when we all got back from school for the summer one year, we decided to take a camping trip together. We all brought tents, ingredients to make s'mores, and plenty of drinks. We carpooled there in 2 cars to a campsite that was about 3 hours away. When we got there, we got our campsite set up and started hanging out by the lake. We had a campfire going, and most of us were talking, drinking, and just having a good time. We were going late into the night, and in the immediate area, we didn't see any other people at all. Because of this, when we had to pee, we would just run into the woods a little ways and go next to a tree. At one point, I had to go and got up from my chair around the fire and made my way into the woods. There was a little path there to walk on, and it was amazing how much darker it was away from the fire after looking near it for so long. Took my eyes a while to adjust as I walked into the woods. I got maybe 20 feet in or so when I heard somebody else was in there too. I figured it was one of my friends, so I walked deeper into the woods so we could both have a little more privacy. I made my way maybe 50 feet or so down the path, and then went next to a tree. When I was done, I made my way back to the little trail and was walking back. I started to hear more noises as I did. The noises were coming from in the woods, off the path, and to the left side. I really didn't think it was one of my friends because I didn't know why they would go this far in. I thought maybe it could be an animal and feared it was possibly a bear. I picked up my pace of walking when all of a sudden I heard a very loud sound of a tree branch cracking. I then saw a giant section of a tree falling right behind me on the path about 5 feet away. I was lucky I had sped up or I could have been crushed by it. And when I say this tree branch was large, it was massive. I didn't know of anybody or anything that could break a piece of tree off like that. It wasn't raining or storming either, so I wasn't sure how it happened. I was terrified, and then heard more loud noises in the woods, as if something was running. I looked behind me into the woods where the noise was. I saw for a brief second a large dark figure darting between trees, and then disappeared deeper into the woods. It was moving so fast and strange, like nothing I had ever seen before. At that point, I turned and sprinted all the way back to the fire. When I got back, my friends saw how shaken up I looked and asked me what was wrong. I told them they would never believe me, but I tried my best to explain. Some of my friends mentioned how they did hear a noise of a tree breaking just in the woods and wondered what exactly it was. That made me feel a little bit better, but regardless, I was pretty rattled the rest of the night. If I hadn't been with such a large group of friends, I would have gotten no sleep at all that night. Luckily, after that, the rest of the camping trip was fine, but I'll never forget whatever that was I saw out in the woods. When I was 12, my mom took my best friend and I to go camping. She set us up with an air mattress in the back of her car, while she slept outside in a tent. Everything was going fine at first. We just stayed up talking, making jokes, listening to music, and eating snacks. At about 3 or 4 a.m. though, things started to get weird. We were still awake, and I was looking out the window on my friend's side. When I did, something caught my eye. Something seemed to be moving, slid up to the window, and its hands pressed up against it. It had an all-white, completely circular head, and a thin black stripe going down the middle. It also had an unnaturally stick-thin body, and hands that resembled mittens rather than human hands. Just as it locked eyes with me, it slid away as quickly as it had appeared. At first, I thought I was hallucinating out of my delirium, so I started to laugh and told my friend. Her eyes widened, and she asked me, "You saw it too?" I asked her to describe what she had seen in case she was pranking me, and she described the exact same thing I had seen. We scrambled to make sure all the doors were locked, and although we were secure in the car, it was safe to say we didn't get any sleep for the rest of the night. Last summer, my girlfriend and I went camping for a weekend. Camping is not something that we do a lot, but we do like the outdoors, so we were looking forward to it. We went to a little spot near the woods, and seemed to be the only ones camping in that area. When we got there, we had a tent to set up, which took a lot longer than I thought it would take, but once it was up, it made for a nice shelter, and it was a good thing we had it too, because on the first night, shortly after the sun set, it started to rain outside. We hurried to get inside the tent, and decided to just go to bed early, seeing as we wouldn't be able to make a campfire or anything like that with it raining. It wasn't like a pouring rain, but it was steady, and there would occasionally be a little crack of thunder off in the distance. The sound of the rain hitting the tent was a nice, relaxing sound. My girlfriend fell asleep not too long after, but it was only like 9 p.m., and I wasn't used to going to bed quite that early. I just wasn't tired yet, and I couldn't sleep. I stayed up and watched YouTube videos on my phone for a while. I did, surprisingly, have pretty good service out there, which was nice. I had my headphones in not to wake my girlfriend, and as I was watching a video, I noticed at the top of my vision past our tent, there was a shadow of someone walking by. I put down my phone and looked up to see the clear shadow of a man on the side of our tent. This was strange. We hadn't seen anyone else near us, and this guy seemed to be within a couple feet of our tent facing us. Plus, it was raining a lot outside, and I didn't know why I would be out walking. I watched the man slowly walk around to our tent to the other side of it. I removed one of my earbuds and felt my heart start to pound harder and harder. The man walked around to the side of the tent that was near the woods. He then went right by where I was, and I heard a small scraping as if he was running his hand along the side of the tent. I moved back suddenly when I heard this. The man seemed to notice me, but then walked off into the woods. I heard the leaves and trees rustling, going deeper and deeper away. I was glad the man was now gone, but I was concerned as to who he was and what exactly he was doing. I thought about waking up my girlfriend, but ultimately decided not to. I thought I should try to just lay down and go to sleep, because I thought if I stayed up, I might just get paranoid. But as I was laying there, all of a sudden, I heard more scraping against the tent. This time, it was at the side of the tent where our heads were. I looked up and saw the guy was standing right there. I couldn't see any details because I was just seeing his silhouette on the other side of the tent. I lay there not knowing what to do. If this guy did happen to be dangerous or something, I really didn't have anything to defend myself with. I then thought I could barely hear a man's voice mumble something outside of the tent. I couldn't make out anything he said, though. Eventually, I saw the shadow back away and out of sight. I didn't hear the man go off into the woods again or anything like that, but I no longer saw his shadow or heard anything other than the rain which was still falling. I laid there looking around for probably an hour. I didn't hear or see anything else. Eventually, I was able to fall asleep. The next morning, I woke up early at about 7 a.m. It was light out now and I looked around. The door to our tent had been unzipped and was partially open. I tapped my girlfriend on the shoulder until she woke up. I asked her if she had left the tent at all during the night, and she told me no. I got really creeped out after that and left the tent and looked all around. There was nobody in sight, though, and after telling my girlfriend about what had happened the previous night, we decided to cut our camping trip short and just go home that day.